Well, it's time for us to answer some email questions. Are you ready?
Just a few minutes, okay.
Okay, this is a viewer, Pat, who says, will I be disappointing God if I separate from my husband? He cheated multiple times before we married. I know I was young and stupid. Last year, I caught him talking to a woman. We have been married for 4 years now. They did not have sex, so I was forced to stay. He now has a Facebook, and I'm so miserable all the time because he adds women even though I don't agree. He says I'm just jealous and he'd rather be alone than with me. We now sleep in separate rooms. What should I do? Should I stay and honor my vows regardless?
You know, I don't know enough about your circumstances. Technically, I don't see that you've got grounds to leave. You say he cheated on you while you were engaged. That gave you a clue he was the wrong spouse, but you went ahead and got married anyhow. You know, it's a shame to compound these situations, and I see nothing wrong with a separation. You know, the trouble is, if you're separated, unless he goes on and consummated a relationship someplace else, you will be bound, but nevertheless, it may make you feel happier not to be living with him. You don't have to do that. The question is, it's divorce and remarriage that's the problem. So, you know, God hates divorce. I just want to say that God wants to hold marriages together. He wants to redeem situations. But, you know, it's a technical thing. Your husband, obviously, he has a wandering eye and he wants multiple partners, and he's now getting them on Facebook, but he will consummate before you know what's going on, all right?
This is Geraldine, Pat, who says, my grandson has joined a church that claims Jesus returned to earth in Korea to help fight against another Christian denomination. They claim Jesus died and is buried there and that he will rise in Korea once again. The church puts the name of the so-called Jesus behind Jesus's name. That faith preaches that we were once angels and were thrown out with Lucifer. My grandson gave all he had to this church. My heart is broken. My grandson wants to show me the scriptures where this church is correct. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, isn't that Sun Young Moon's church? It's the Moonies, it sounds like.
I don't know. You know, I think this is a different thing than Sun Young Moon, but I had never heard of it, but someone in our hair department knew what it was about, and apparently it's being preached here.
They got nutty things coming out of Korea, and that was one more of them. So, I mean, Moon was, he had thousands of followers along the way, and he was... he was a charlatan, so it sounds like this is the same thing. That's obviously false. There's nothing you could show in the Bible in a heartbeat that what they're teaching isn't true. Just get any of the Gospels and you can show it. But it must break your heart to see something like this, but it's obviously false, all right?
Okay, this is Rose, who says, my father was a devout Christian for 12 years before falling back into alcohol and sexual sin. When he died, would he have gone to hell because he died in sin?
You know, if you read some of the scriptural things, it talks about somebody who's living for the Lord, and then they fall away from the Lord. Somebody who's fallen away from the Lord, then he returns to the Lord. All right. In a situation like that, I'm not the one who determines the eternal destiny of anybody, but I would say that if he's gone back into sin and he's not living for the Lord, I can't give him much hope in eternity.
Yeah.
Really.
It's so hard to, you know, there are scriptures and people who believe that once saved, always saved, but you're right. It does talk about know a tree by the fruit it bears.
If you fall, that's right. You know, it's kind of like, there's always the thing in the Bible about fear to fall. We don't want to walk in fear, we walk in hope and knowledge, but you say, well, I went forward at a meeting 50 years ago. Now I can live any way I want to for the rest of my life. Paul says such condemnation is just. It's wrong teaching.